I think the biggest red flag that you should be concerned about is if the price is too cheap, you're probably never going to see your car again.
That's fair.
Because people do it all the time. And when you get these smaller shops that are doing this, they'll buy jobs.
How does that work?
Like, I'll just tell you whatever you need to hear so that I get your money.
Oh.
So it's like, it's going to be $10,000. And you're like, ooh. And you're like, I'll probably do it for $8,000. And you're like, hey, how about $7,500? Now they think you're doing you a favor. Like, well, I'm doing it cheap for you, bro.
Oh, I see.
And then your job always gets pushed to the back because they're always looking to get new money in.
Welcome back to another episode on Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim?
I'm Rob.
And on this podcast, we talk about custom cars because we have a custom shop located here in British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about sketchy car shops. Or or how
to choose.
I got a couple on our list already.
And how to pick the right custom car shop because there is a lot of stigma or some stigma that goes around with custom car shops. There's a lot of things about like you give them your car and you never see it again, pretty much, or you give them your car like T-Pain. I don't know if you've seen the story of T-Pain, but he gave his drift car, I think, to a custom shop, and it was completely ruined. After like 4 years of nothing, they returned the car, and it came back in worse form than it left. So we're going to be talking about that and how you pick the right custom shop. So with that said, we're going to dive right in. So how is it going? Porsche is an ice blasting.
Porsche's at ice blasting.
Porsche RSR.
Rob did a bunch more Skylark things. We did some Viper things.
Oh, yeah, Viper. Yeah.
What else is there? They're still working on the 190, so I think that's fully polished now and ready to go.
And so, Rob, what did you do on the Viper?
It's, what year is it? It's like
2009?
2009, so it was a Gen 4 Viper, and this customer had an ACR ECU, am I right?
Yep.
Yeah, so he had an ACR ECU, and he wanted it in, so Tim installed that for him last year, did the headers on it. He has an aftermarket exhaust system in it, so the ACR ECU, the theory is it's sending off engine lights with it installed, so it was taken back out of it, and according to some knowledgeable people on some forums, our customer decided he wanted to do a cat delete.
Ooh.
So we did a cat delete on it for him. So we made it so it's a reversible thing. We put flanges on it.
Nice.
Made some I guess some people call them test pipes. So there's some cat delete test pipes in place now, and the ACR ECU was reinstalled, and we just finished that and flashed it up yesterday, and it sounds nasty as
Very
shit.
nice.
It's pretty cool.
Throwback things too. We're doing chopper things.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Tim's been finishing off a really cool little West Coast Chopper CFL frame that we got.
Sweet.
It's in the final stages of assembly, and
Alex
it's a pretty cool bike.
Alex made some taillights or something?
Yeah, he scanned the rear section because originally we had done a tail light and 3D printed it out of resin. But we made a few little revisions, and he did that, and it turned out amazing. That 3D scanner, man.
That's amazing.
It's magic.
So cool.
It's magic.
It really is.
It's like the magic wand in
I
the
know.
custom car world.
Just wave it.
I think that's going to lead into our topic today.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have one, don't go there. They're not far enough along in their development because it is so crazy.
Yeah. So we're going to dive right into the topic of conversation, which is sketchy car shops or picking the right custom car shop to build your car. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a story that went around a few months ago just about T-Pain, the musician. He met this guy that owned a custom car shop, and I think the guy was teaching him how to build or how to like drift or something. He hadn't learned how to drift at this point. So it was kind of teaching him, and then something went wrong with the car. I think he like nicked it a little bit, and he was like, oh, I'll take this back to my shop and I'll get it done. It'll be fine like next weekend. But a few months turned into a few years. He ended up taking it on a video shoot on like he used it for a TV show. used it, destroyed it. I know.
Fixed it without telling him.
I know, fixed it without telling him. But then the video came out online of the TV show and him saying, yeah, T-Pain was okay with me taking this car. Or
Oh, wow.
I know. And so T-Pain, of course, saw all this and it started a whole drama thing. And yeah, because he returned, T-Pain was finally like, okay, I've sent you enough money. I've sent you thousands and thousands of dollars in hard cash, and I haven't seen any results yet. And he was like, sure. He sent them the car back to T-Pain, and it was a disaster. I'll try to put pictures of it here, but it was a 240SX, and there was like a Pickle Rick wrap that is known for the Pickle Rick car. So he wrapped it, but it was so bad. The new wrap was so bad. The bodywork was bad. You've seen the video.
I've seen it.
Oh,
It
it's
is bad.
so bad.
Like, really bad.
So bad. And so that kind of spiraled us into talking about this topic of knowing reputable shops to give custom cars to. So, thoughts?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't consider anybody, an option to, take my car or anything to have them work on it unless I could see like a direct history of really great results. That's pretty obvious and logical if you think about it. I mean, you can clearly see. I mean, you can't really hide anything nowadays. Social media is wide open for the world to see, and like you easily see a history of either really janky shit or really great looking things. And then like once you have that kind of some sort of idea in mind, then you go have a conversation with these people. If they come off as shady fuckers, then don't go there. I mean, if anybody's trying to, I'm old school enough that when I'm talking to somebody face to face, if they're not giving me direct eye contact, I automatically feel like they're shady.
Yeah.
So I'm old world enough to think that that's one of the things that's kind of important.
Most people are just socially awkward, so that doesn't necessarily apply anymore.
But I think maybe that might be true. So it's kind of in a combination of like build histories.
I think that's the key to the whole thing, because like any other I do this every single time.
Yep.
It doesn't apply to, like, it applies in every other industry. Like if you're going to kitchen renovation, you'd want to see examples of previous work.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're doing like a major renovation per se, it's like, can I talk to like some of your previous customers?
Oh,
It'd be an
interesting.
easy thing. Or you're going to see other work. Like, hey, can you give me some examples of
what
your
you've
work?
done. Yeah.
Like it shouldn't be that hard. And if they can't produce that, you should probably go the other way.
Well, you should definitely, that should be raising a few flags anyways, right? Like any previous customer or anything like that. I mean, as an employer of people and a creative person, you should be proud enough and confident enough in what you've done that you can allow any random customer that you've not done work for to go and talk to anybody that you've ever done work for. You should be because you should have enough pride in what you've done. And if you can't do that with any kind of, measure of confidence,
No, but
maybe you never did a good enough job.
I feel like some people are very good at hiding some stuff too, because
True.
Prime example, at this guy's shop, he's like, yeah, I work on supercars. And so he has pictures of supercars at his shop, website, all that stuff. And yeah, and so I feel like there's still ways that you can hide all those things, or like, I don't know.
That's true. That's true. And but like, if you're referring to like, if I was T-Pain,
yep.
Okay, and some dude said, yeah, I'll build you a drift car. I work on supercars. I'd be like, I don't know if I want you to build me a drift car. You work on supercars.
There is that. So I mean,
it's not the same.
Like right now, we're just kind of shit talking this particular guy. But
Yeah.
if you're actually legitimately looking for a custom shop, you need to find one that does what you need.
Okay.
So if you want a drift car, I'm going to go to the drift car shop
And
be like, hey, you guys built drift cars before? And I mean, at the same time, we never built an EV vehicle before, and someone came to us to build an EV vehicle.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's based on a track record of accomplishing multiple
Prior
different
things.
builds and different levels and for
Yes.
different purposes. So there's a certain amount of confidence that you can have, because it's like, hey, everything's here for you to see. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Whereas if you have nothing and you're just relying on their word and there's none of these whizzy things around, or you can't, like, even me right now, I don't think there's a customer I couldn't call to get them to come bring their car so I could show another customer.
That's pretty cool.
Like, if they wanted something similar, I could be like, hey, I can call this guy, get him to bring his car, you can have a look at it.
Wow.
And if you think about it, and you're here every day,
Yep.
every car in the shop is being built on a previous premise of a car that we'd built before. Like, I love this car that you built, so I want this done.
Yep.
So it's like, that's how you build a track record. And you see what it's like here. Like, we have our customers here every day, and we're ball busting them, they're ball busting us, and it's like, you have a relationship with them right away. But it's like, there's I don't know, you go into some of these other places and you're like, where do you guys do the work?
Yeah.
Like, this showroom is fantastic, but where's the work get done?
Yeah.
Whereas here, we don't have the showroom. We just have all the work.
Yeah.
So when you walk in right into the middle of it, and it's like, okay, there's a lot of stuff happening in here. This place is late, and everyone that comes in here says the same thing. Like, there's shit happening in here all day, every day.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of these places, it's like, how often do we get to go to events?
True.
Like,
Barely.
these guys are like, if the only car they've ever finished is theirs, and they're at every single event, everything, I would be suspicious, man. It's like, I don't have time to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's lots of tells.
Yeah.
If the best car they've ever built is their car, it's probably on somebody else's money and somebody else's time.
How does that work?
Well, you see so many people get cars in based on a car that they've built for themselves, which you have to do. You need a calling card, of course you do. But the problem is like, they'll sell the dream based on that car, but you don't know how much that car cost or how long it took them
to build,
to get to the point that it's that. So you have no baseline. So a lot of these cars, you never saw when it was broken down. You don't know when the car was started. You don't know any of the, what got it to here. And then show me another example. It's kind of like the dyno tuning guys. It's like the one car they tuned perfectly is theirs.
Their own car, yeah.
Might have took them 3 years to figure it out. So it's the same with these guys. Like, okay, cool, your car is awesome. Can you show me some other examples of your work? And if there is none, then that's it. He might have made that car perfect, but it could have took him 5 years.
Yeah.
And you can't afford 5 years of shop time. There's no way.
No.
And then how many cars go in? Oh, there's so many examples of this. Where they have their car, you go to their shop, there's like 5 other cars tore apart.
Yo, I didn't even think about. That actually leads me to literally another example. It is a YouTuber that I'm sure if you do some Googling you can check. But and I heard about this. I don't know how true it is, but it also happened like maybe a year or two ago. He built like, I think, RX-7s, or I knew it was a very specific car, or I think it was GTRs. I don't remember.
Oh, GTRs.
Yeah.
I know the guy you're talking
about.
And he was the guy. We actually had a customer
guy
in here bragging about this guy and what level he was doing things, and then finds out he was doing it with everybody else's shit.
Yeah, so what he did, or
it's
allegedly,
like an automotive Ponzi scheme.
Allegedly would take parts from other people's cars and build another car of his own, or build like another customer's car or something, and pretty much just be moving that around and pretty much taking money from them constantly. At least allegedly, this is what I heard, because we don't want to get sued over here.
But yeah, he had the craziest GTR collection, and he is basically using other people's parts to finish current projects. So it was literally like an automotive Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, I take your parts to finish his car, get another guy in, take his parts to finish your car, and it's just constantly moving.
So yeah, and so there were so many, which is really cool now for the internet, because it exists, so people can go and recount experiences. But if you go to like some Facebook pages, like people were just bashing, and so there was some other news that came out about this guy and all of that stuff. But it goes to I didn't even think about it when I was talking about this topic. But yeah, that's another big thing I feel like that happens. Of they just take the money and use it on either their car or someone else's car. So yeah. Well, have you guys ever dealt with a customer that came from a previous shop like that?
Yeah.
We've had customer cars in our shop that were pulled out of other shops where they're pulling shady shit there. Like it used to happen quite a bit more often, like locally. Yeah, it's of course. I mean, this is not a new thing. There's lots of shady.
We
fuckers
literally
out
had
there.
one shop actually call us,
Okay.
and is like, "What the hell are you saying to my customers that they're pulling their cars and bringing them to your shop?" I was like, "Buddy, it has nothing to do with me. They're coming to me
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of the way you're treating them."
Yeah.
So it was like it became a thing. That shop ultimately, I think, by the time they were done, had like $5 million in lawsuits or something against them for doing, even just doing stuff that people weren't asking for.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was the opposite. Like most shops aren't doing what they're being paid for. These guys were doing stuff that they weren't asked to do.
Yeah.
So you pick up your car and it's
Oh,
a
and they
completely
bill
different
you.
car.
Oh, they're
Yeah,
a
bill
different
the
car.
shit out of you.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, there's that opposite end of it. But a lot of these shops, it's especially smaller shops. And I'd say another thing that you need to look for, and it's another thing that nobody seems to do in our industry, is what's your background?
How so?
Like, why do you think you can build custom cars? Like, do you have a background in mechanics? Are you a legitimate fabricator? Are you a welder? Are you like everybody in our shop has a certification in something?
Okay.
Every single person. Rob's a licensed fabricator, welder. I'm fabricator, welder, mechanic. I hold Red Seal tickets in it. Our auto body shop, same thing. Everybody has some form of a ticket that they've expanded upon. But a lot of these small custom shops are like, they just have a custom shop because they want a custom shop.
Yeah.
They don't have any foundation for it other than a love of cars, which once you start working on other people's cars might not be enough.
I was gonna ask. So what about that is a bad idea? Like if you, for example, I love cars and I've, for example, built one.
How long do you think your
cars.
custom shop would last?
I don't know.
It's this whole
Probably
YouTube
not.
thing. It's like
Yeah.
you wouldn't get someone to put a roof on your house unless they were a legitimate roofer.
Yeah, no, that was exactly what happened with this GTR guy, because people have watched his content and so they assume that because he works on his cars, that he can build their cars or their dream cars.
Yeah.
And all of that. But so you haven't like encountered a case where it's like a practical case of that working out, where it's like they just love cars but don't have like the proper documentation?
I don't think it's unreasonable to imagine that is possible. Like you can just be passionate and love, cars enough to get good at what you do. I mean, it's it's not unheard of.
There's
of
lots
course.
of all kinds of things. Construction guys, woodworkers. Of course, you can be self-taught and get super good at it. But if you're trying to choose one, if you don't have a history or like a body of work to show as an example, a simple question going in the door is like, what are your credentials?
Yeah. That's
How long have you been here for? What do you do?
What have you done?
What
Like,
have you
Yeah,
done?
and it's completely related to whatever you're maybe inquiring to have done at said custom shop. Like if you go to a custom shop and you say, "Hey, can you make me from scratch out of metal something for my project?" And if they're like, yeah, probably, not maybe. But like if they're a welder or a fabricator, you should be able to have some level of faith in knowing that they could probably pull it off.
Or they should have some examples of having done it before.
yes.
Like it's a roll cage is not an easy thing to do. So thinking you have the ability to build one and actually having the ability to build one is
Two different things.
yeah, like you got to educate yourself on it too. Like have a little bit. Like if you go in there, like, hey, can you build me a roll cage? And it's like, yeah, like okay, cool. Can you show me like, what kind of bender do you guys use? What do you have? And it's like, oh, we don't actually have one yet.
We just use our
Well,
hands.
and I think,
Yeah,
and
it's like there's lots of little tells that are going to be, and then might be shops. It might just come down to strictly aesthetics. Like you don't want to bend your aesthetic to somebody. Like we get it all the time. Like we turn away a ton of work. Like hey, I want to do this. Like, nah, I'm not into that. That's not what we do here.
yeah.
There's other opportunity, and then I get a lot of people that want us to do something, I guess just because it's us. And then they'll try to bend their project like, okay, well, what would you do? Like, well, no, I still don't want to do it. Like, if I'm not into it. So it's being honest with yourself and finding out what the project is, and then just doing a little bit of homework. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like any prospective client or person that owns a car, they're gonna want to go to a shop, and you're gonna want to ask these people, these shop owners, lots of questions. I mean, you need to ask them, like, specifically, like as the example, a roll cage. If someone came to me and said, "Hey, can you build me a roll cage?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can build you a roll cage, but what is it for? Like, what is your roll cage? What's its purpose?" Because I mean, there's different rules and regulations and things to build for different sanctioning bodies, different uses. If it is purely aesthetic, you can kind of go wild and do whatever you want. It's just artistic expression. But if it's for a specific racing purpose, there's rules that you need to follow. And anybody with, any kind of experience that, is enough to back up their abilities would know to ask questions like that to the client. What do you plan to do with it?
So what about timeline? Whenever you're building something for a client, for example, like,
I don't think timeline is really a factor in the situation.
Really?
Before timeline, I think the biggest red flag that you should be concerned about, and which is why most people end up in problems with their projects, is how much. Like, if the price is too cheap, you're probably never going to see your car again.
That's fair.
Because people do it all the time. And when you get these smaller shops that are doing this shit, they'll buy jobs. Like, I call it buying a job.
How does that work?
Like, I'll just tell you whatever you need to hear so that I get your money.
Oh.
So it's like, it's going to be $10,000. And you're like, ooh. And you're like, could probably do it for 8. And you're like, hey, how about 7,500? And then you'll never see your car again.
Oh, I
because
see.
they're just trying to get stuff in for whatever it takes. And then they lose interest, or the job is bigger than what they quoted. And then it sits because now they think you're doing you a favor. Like, well, I'm doing it cheap for you, bro.
Oh, I see.
And then your job always gets pushed to the back because they're always looking to get new money in all the time. And it sucks. It happens, and you'll end up in a situation like that. And then that's why those cars are sitting in the back, because they brought them in way too cheap. So if you go to one shop and they're like, I want an LS swap, and you're like, it's going to be between, realistically, depending on which one you buy, $15,000 and $25,000.
Everything included.
Everything included, turnkey. You're ready to go out the door. Like, there's a range there, of course, based on you want a basic LS1 or you want, sky's the limit.
Pretty broad spectrum.
Pretty broad spectrum.
Right
Yeah.
But if you go in and it's like, yeah, we can do it for you for $4,000. You're like, but of course you're like, that's awesome.
Freaking cheap, man.
That's awesome.
I said 25,000.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then in the car goes, you never see
Deal.
it again. Or you get a $4,000 engine swap.
Oh,
That's not the best. So, like, I would say that's probably, because it costs a lot of money. Like, you see, we get customers all the time, and they're giving you examples of $1 million cars. Like, how do you think they end up being $1 million? So it's not a cheap thing to do. And if the price is too cheap, they probably already got problems.
That's interesting. Okay, I would have not even thought about that, but yeah, not picking. So
We
not
literally
picking
got a
the
job
cheapest-
because we were 3 times higher than anybody else he asked.
Wait, what do you say?
We literally got a job in the shop because we were 3 times higher than anybody else.
I know it's
What?
It's kind of mental to think about
That's
that.
crazy.
But it's true, and this client is like, yeah. So I asked around, I shopped around a little bit, and asked a couple of different places, and you guys were 3 times higher, and there has to be a reason for it. So what is the reasoning? And so we broke it down to him. Like, this is why it is.
You need this. You need this.
Yeah,
So just right
that
there,
makes sense.
in hard
Done.
parts,
You guys got the job.
Wow. Okay,
because
that's
everything had been accounted for.
yeah.
And a decent amount of labor to actually accomplish the goal. Whereas everybody else
And a
was
reasonable
like,
timeline, too.
You couldn't even buy the parts. It's turned unreasonable, but
Well, yeah, because
he's a very patient guy.
yeah.
But yeah, that's
pretty cool.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
That's a real thing.
And then, but so talking more about costs, what if, and could be a lot of factors that play into this point, but what if you they bring the car in to a shop and then they quote them, like, for example, talking about the LS swap, they quote them for, or let's say $5,000-$6,000, but like 6 months later, or not, no, let's even say like 3 or 4 months later, they add another few thousand and then keep on adding. Like, is there Yeah, because you don't want to get jacked that way. But like, how does that work?
So I mean,
Well,
that's
there has
that's
to be a
you,
justification for it.
Okay.
Like if you're just like, hey, I need 3,000, 3,000, 3,000. It's like, well, can you give me an idea of what it's for? Mm-hmm. That should be it. Like it shouldn't be that hard.
very, very clear and transparent communication is critical.
Yeah.
In everything, like, oh, miscommunication issue is a common thing you hear all the time. It's like, no, man. Like,
I don't think it should be that because all the information is readily available.
Yeah.
Like you go on the internet and you look up costs, it's going to be plus or minus a certain amount.
Yep.
Like you can't tell me that like if you use this part by name brand and you look it up, it's going to be, say it's a $600 part, you might be able to find it for $550 or $625, and as long as you're within that range,
That's so fine. Yeah.
you're good. But if it's like, oh, I had to get you this and it's $1,300, you're like, what? Why?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if they start padding parts and like, and that's the thing, you can't be afraid to pull your car out of someplace either. So if you get that first ding and you're not seeing, like
The worth.
yeah, and at the same time, you can't be adding stuff. Like some people are constantly adding and changing their mind. That's a completely different conversation. But if you go in and you've given money and it's like a month later, nothing's happened, you should just pull your car right away.
Wow. I
Well,
feel like that's also a hard thing to do because I feel like similar to when we're talking about cars or getting invested in like different types of cars or whatever, you get invested in a build and you're almost like there. You're like, oh shoot, like you're excited for it. And so I feel like that is probably one of the hardest things to do is to pull your car because you're not only like abandoning that thought of, or like that shop in general, but like, I don't know. I feel like that's a very hard thing to do. So I feel like you shouldn't just pull your car out immediately. Like for like,
No, I'm saying
needs
like
to be
after
justified.
a passage of time, like
Yeah.
if it's been 3 months and if they're ahead on the money, it happens to us all the time. We don't take money we haven't worked for. So, because shit changes constantly, like things get delayed, things get pushed, when things don't happen fast enough. But if I don't have your money, chances are you might be disappointed your project's not moving fast enough. But you don't feel ripped off. Like you're never going to feel ripped off because it's like we've worked up to this point. Now we have to, finish this because we're waiting for this or whatever.
Yeah.
Timelines move. There can be disappointment because there's unforeseen things all the time. But if you're not ahead of the money, then people can't really get mad at you and feel pissed
cheated,
off,
yeah.
feel cheated. Because then as soon as they start to feel cheated, or you feel cheated, like, man, I gave you $5,000 and it's been a
not done
month,
anything.
you haven't done nothing. So, like, what's going to happen here? That's when you need to start getting concerned.
Oh, okay. So the way you guys typically do it is you work on the car first and then bill after the
Like
work
every
you've
2
done.
weeks.
Yeah.
every 2 weeks.
Yep.
So, and then if there's a 2-week period where you can't, like, hey, can you guys slow down a little bit? Because
You can't catch up.
But for the most part, we try to screen our customers and make sure they have all the money to keep it moving. And then the manipulation of timeline is usually how parts come in and all this type of stuff. And that might change, but you try and like, we've gotten better at like, if it's a month's worth of work, I'll tell you it's going to take 3 months to get done because things happen, things change.
Yeah.
We need to be able to jump around and address other projects and
You're
other
waiting
things.
on parts.
Waiting on parts. So that's a big thing. So you have to give realistic timelines,
Yep.
whereas a lot of these guys don't. And then if you don't have proof of work, like we'll bill based on proof of work. So whatever's on your bill, you can come and look at it if you feel you need to.
Yep.
But if you don't have that, I wouldn't give any more money.
I see. Okay.
So like
That's
you,
so
you need
good,
to
though.
establish that relationship at the beginning
Yeah.
and give realistic timeline. But a lot of these guys, small shops, they need to get money in, so they'll tell you whatever they need to hear, work on your car for 3-4 days, and then jump on the next guy's car, or they got to get money from the next guy because they
put
already
into
spent
this-
the money from the last
yeah.
guy, and it turns into this vicious. It's super common in the customer, and it's hard not to do.
Yeah.
It's super hard not to do because you're so lean, and a lot of these small guys are only 1 or 2 guys, so to stay ahead of it is tough.
Tough. Yeah.
And then they might not necessarily intentionally be trying to do it, but it happens.
It happens,
It
yeah.
happens. So
That's pretty cool. I feel like that gives you a lot of accountability to be able to, because again, you're not going to be like, oh shoot, I'm getting this money and I've not done anything. And I'm like, maybe I'll just use it for blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Little things here and there. And before you know it's all gone.
Yeah, no, it's too easy to happen, right?
and then
So
a
we
lot of
just don't
times
do
you
it.
don't have money to get the parts you need to do the job.
Oh, yeah.
So then you're screwed. So I mean, like custom shop stuff is, they're small guys.
Yeah, that's a very slippery
And the
slope.
biggest problem is in the custom car world, I would say almost 90% of custom car guys
Yep.
aren't great business people.
Yeah.
We were not great business people. It took a long time to like get there, but when we went in, it's like, oh, the business part's easy. We're just gonna build awesome cars and take money.
Yep.
So most guys have zero background in business, and then that's their single biggest struggle in the whole thing. It's like money in, money out, and it's like they're never paying attention. And we've had to learn and adapt.
Yeah, and it's a constant evolution of learning business as well, because it's critical. It'll make or break. And as the shop grows, it's more and more and more important. So Tim is having to like learn shit all the time. Like it's constant.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys that, but do you guys take any like classes and stuff, or no? Like it's just practical stuff.
So far, most of it's practical now. I mean, you've probably done a fair amount of like reading and
and you start to pick out in things that you like, situations that you need to deal with, and then you can search out those topics individually. But as far as like taking classes, there is some available that that are very tailored to our industry.
Oh, nice.
That I'm interested in taking.
Oh, that's
even
cool.
at this point, like we've been in business 17 years. And I'd still take a class now.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Because it's a great idea. You never stop learning, right? We've been really fortunate, like in our early days. Especially you, Tim. Like you were able to be mentored by some really, really, very successful business people that helped us sort of like kind of figure it out at the beginning and like get off running on the right path, and that was kind of critical. That was really good. I mean, we've evolved a lot since then, but
now we're at the cusp of a whole nother level, because now you're trying to scale and like produce parts and all this kind of stuff. So it's a whole nother thing to learn. Yeah,
and even from that, I bet you also learn from experience, because even the parts production, for example, like we've been trying to make the Evo wide body kits for a while now.
Yeah, and we've been trying to do it in our own country, and it seems like it's impossible.
But it's just things that you learn, and you're like, oh yeah, it's probably worth it to go to have it manufactured in another country, and all of that. But what is also really interesting too is that even though yes, we've listed multiple people, we've told multiple people multiple times that we're getting the parts, we're getting these things made, but we don't take any money for it. Like you don't be like, oh yeah, it'll be 10 grand. Give me some money.
How many people have you seen that have offered to pay deposits?
Yeah.
And I was like, until I have something solid in place, I don't want their money.
Smart.
Because if it goes sideways, the next thing you know, you're a piece of shit. Yeah. You may not have been intended to be a piece of shit. You just end up a piece of shit. And then you're like, because I got told by somebody like everything I wanted to hear, and I was ready to go. We're like, let's do it. So I'm like, okay, I got a solid guy. He's ready to do it. He told me this. And if I hadn't have waited to see what it was going to be like and held back, if I just started taking deposits like, hey, we got a guy now, pre-sales are in, I would have been fucked.
Disaster.
And it was, like, unless you're smart enough to like, oh, okay, we're going to put this in an account and just, but you don't.
No.
You never do. You're like, okay, money in, we got opportunity. Yeah. And you use it on something else, and then this guy falls through, and I'm trying to refund 40 people's deposits. You can't do it. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, fortunately we didn't make that mistake, and we did a bunch of checking on that guy that we were going to use too. We went to his shop. We had a face to face. He was legit. Like, he was a legit manufacturer, and we were really, really excited about it because his stuff was awesome. Yeah, he did. Is it the guy that awesome. I went to his shop? Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Really nice work.
Yeah,
but
really nice.
Our work just didn't fit in with what he had going on.
Yeah, and
so
then
he ended up not being the right guy.
Yep. Yeah, it just fell through, and it was kind of unfortunate.
But, and then we brought in somebody that like they wanted to step up to the plate and do it, and they weren't able to do it either. So now it's like, now we got to try to, go to another country and do it, which is a process in itself. Like, it's a whole nother evolution.
Yeah.
So
But it's always just learning, though. Like we've talked about, like you're always constantly learning and evolving, because you can't, especially doing things at the pace that we are now. You can't keep doing it the way it once was, because because you guys could make your own parts. Like you've made fiberglass.
we can 100% do it, but it doesn't make sense because then we're not doing something else.
Yes.
So I don't want to be a fiberglass guy. And how much money can you make being a fiberglass guy? As you're essentially becoming an hourly employee of your own company when there's opportunity for me to be doing other things that are, where my time's better spent. We 100% could make it, but at what expense?
Yeah.
Which just doesn't make sense. Like we need more people. So, and we even tried to bring people in house and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyways, back to the custom shop.
Yes, custom shop topic.
I would say price, timeline, and then their abilities, like proof of ability.
Yeah, proof of ability, like their body of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And if the only car that they've done, I mean, of course, if you're up to it and you see potential and you think this guy is the guy and you want to give him opportunity,
Sure.
go for it.
Yeah.
It happens lots. Like we heard about it in our industry lots, where you get a guy that's got some money and he sees potential in somebody and wants to give them opportunity, and it works out great. But how many times does it not work out great?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It always comes down to like, reading the character of the people in your conversation. I mean, it comes down to that. Like every single one of us started somewhere. Like we didn't just, we weren't just born with these abilities to create awesome things. Like that's not real life. So we all had to start in a place where we had to take a chance and figure it out. And, we had clients that gave us opportunity. We ended up donating a lot of our own time, because you can't charge out for that. Like as a business, you can't justify the cost of what it's going to cost by the hour.
Yeah.
When you're figuring it out, you just can't do it. So
until you get to a point where you believe that nobody else could do it faster, then the hours just become the hours. And
Wow.
even for myself, you look at it, you're like, oh man, that's expensive. But I'm confident that it couldn't have been achieved any faster. So it just is what it is at that point.
So that's that body of work. Now you have that to look back on. You can be like, okay, I have a history of creating all of this. And this is, you can see the history of quality improvement along that sort of timeline. And that's what you should be looking for. As a customer, you should be able to look and see that. Like, okay, you started here and, your latest project looks like this. Like I can visually see it looks nicer now.
Yeah.
And more than likely, it's probably faster. And maybe it costs a small fortune to have it done, but you should be able at least to see the quality of work.
Especially now with social media.
Yes.
I think you just posted something where it was like a collage of all the cars we did last year. And I even forgot.
Yeah.
But how many things have come and gone? Like 25, 30 different things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're following somebody on social media and you don't see that
Any progress?
that turnover, or they're always just working on the same thing, you got to put hours to that. Like, hey, this isn't making sense. Like, you know what I mean? So you got to see some turnover. Like you should be able to follow along and see stuff moving.
Yeah.
Like even here, we joke about it all the time. We have 12 customers. So it's like, oh, working on the Viper again, but it's something different. It's something new. And it's like this evolution of all these different projects, but they're coming and going.
Yeah.
And they're being used. And they come back, which is an testament to what we did the last time. So it's like, that's another thing. Like, do you have repeat customers? Do you see this sort of repetition? There's lots of tells that that are out there.
Yeah.
And
you
after
can
a
go
little
to
while, after a little while too, like those repeat customers, they bring some other friends.
Yeah, it's referrals.
because of what you've done. And like it's a small little world. There's that, what is it, like the 7 degrees of separation kind of thing, where like this person told that person, and like if you put it on a piece of paper, you can these people all know each other, and wow, it's like a big web of referrals
Right now,
based on your
basically,
body of work.
everybody in the shop knows each other.
Yeah.
Other than the guys from Ireland, like everybody is.
Yeah, sometimes they see each other on the way out.
They either
coming
know
in.
each other, or they're friends, or they're aware of each other, or they're in a similar industry. Then it's like that's just the way it goes, and that should be an easy thing. It's easy to check up, and we'll check out customers the same way you should be checking out builders. Well, because it's a relationship, and some people it's like, okay, if you were having stuff done over here and now you're not anymore, and those guys, our impression of those guys is like, oh, they're a decent shop. Like, why aren't you taking your car there anymore? Like, what happened? Or why are you here? So if you're here for something that you used to be able to get done there,
There's a reason.
there might be a reason. So I need to know what the reason is. Is there falling out? Or like, are you an asshole? Like, we need to know why. Or are we doing something that's outside of the scope of what they do? Then it makes sense. It's an easy thing. And you can check out like, hey, this guy wants me to do this. Is he hard to deal with or whatever? Oh, no, he's a great guy. You should take on his work. We do it all the time. Like, one of our best customers came to us in that very same way. But at the same time, he didn't recommend any of his friends or any of his, circle to us until he felt we could do the work.
But I also wanted to add, when we were talking about that, got me thinking about, let's shift it now to, let's flip it around to the customer versus you guys, like unrealistic expectations of the customer or the client, because that, I bet, is also difficult to manage a lot, because sometimes they might expect you to be here, but you're on this other angle. And like, how do you guys usually, I don't know if it's even related to the topic anymore, but I was just curious of how do you like align all of that? Because sometimes the expectations of like timeline, for example, like we've talked about it before.
Timeline's always a big one.
They drop their car off on Friday and they expect it to be done by Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You're
that's
off.
just clear communication is definitely the way to sort of mitigate any of that problem.
Yeah.
But I mean, it happens. Yeah. Being able to say no.
Yeah. So at that point,
Say,
when
"Nah,
we're
I don't
talking
wanna
of
do it."
like taking cars out, is there a point that it would be that you're like, okay, this customer is repeatedly blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, your car is not going to be at the shop, or like requesting them to take the car. Like, is there a point
like
that it reaches?
firing a customer?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it happens. It's happened to us. I don't think we've really had to do it, but we've definitely had to reset expectations.
Okay.
Like even recently, we had to reset expectations with a bunch of people. Like regardless of either side of the equation, it's like, okay, well, these are the circumstances that have got us here. In order for us to move forward, then this is the way it has to be.
Yeah.
And it's communication. Like I said, like a lot of times people can be disappointed, and you get disappointed all the time. But if there's a justification for said disappointment and there's a resolution, then it's an easy thing. Like it might be a tough conversation, but it's an easy thing to do. So like, and the expectation. So like, again, like choosing a shop is like, if you get to a certain point and you're like, hey, this is not going the way we had originally discussed, what's the reasoning and how do we get beyond it?
Yeah.
And then that's all you got to do. And it sucks to have to do sometimes, but generally if you have the proper information, and it's never negagive. Like you'll see both of us like, and then it's like, like this is why, this is what we can do to resolve it, and then it's like everyone's happy at the end. It's just communication. Like we've never had anybody blow up, nothing like that. But sometimes you have to even reset customers. Like, hey, your expectations are getting a little out of hand here, and they're not meeting your resources. So we either dial this back and come up with a plan that makes sense, or you have opportunity to take your car someplace else.
That's good.
And a lot of times, sometimes that's the other side of it, is like if personalities don't match, that's a legitimate thing. Like I have customers that like I just do not gel with them, and it's like first opportunity to cut ties,
Run at it.
You cut ties because it's no good for either. I'm not going to do your stuff the way you want me to do it, and you don't want to deal with me, so we'll just go our separate ways. It doesn't need to be negative. Like you do it every day in any other circumstance. Why can't you do it in the car industry?
That was funny. Yeah.
No, it's true because, like you said, you create a relationship with these people.
These are long-term projects.
They're humans, right? Like we're all just humans, and we all have to be able to gel well together. Somebody's I can't expect anybody to give me money for what I'm doing, and my stuff is good enough. I can charge for it, but if we don't like each other, then I'm just not going to be in the right mindset for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come into it, like I would say the single worst type of customer that we have are the people that think that once they commission us, that we work for them.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like, well, when you're working for me, you're like, whoa,
No, hold on there.
Hang on. I am doing work for you. I do not work for you. I've had to correct customers in a very blunt way, and they're still customers of ours. How long to do this? I was like, well, it's going to take 2 weeks. But right away, you should be able to do in the math in your head, like, oh, it's going to be $2,000, probably take us 2 weeks. 2 weeks is because we got to bring it in, assess what we need, get the parts, do the stuff, send it back out. But if you're doing the math, it should be simple math in your head. 2 weeks of shop time is like, $15,000, not $2,000. So that doesn't mean that I'm working on your car for an entire 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't
8
make
hours
any sense.
every day for the 2 weeks.
Yeah, so it's like I'm going to accomplish your job sometime within the next 2 weeks. Whether it's the first 2 days or the last 2 days, that's my prerogative, not yours. So don't check in 4 days because it's until 2 weeks has passed, you got nothing to say.
Yeah.
But we're getting on the other side of the conversation.
Yeah.
But going into custom shops, you should be able to ask these questions.
Yeah.
And it should make sense. Like you can look up any of these things. Like basic things, you can sort of get a basic understanding of how long it should take and how much it should cost. And when you go in, there should be a plus or minus based on the level of quality said shop is known for. So if it's approximate is 3,500 and you come here and I tell you it's 5, your expectation is going to be that it's going to be perfect or as close to perfect as it can be. And if you go in and someone quotes you 25 or $3,000, there might be some corners cut. Like they might not be refinishing things. They might just be re-in it and getting you down the road. So those are like, go where you want to be, based on what you want to get done, and have realistic expectations.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think like in today's time, we have cameras and photo libraries in our pockets like all the time. Like you go into a shop, maybe like show a couple of pictures. So this is kind of what I'm hoping to see. I want something like this done on my car. Can you do that? And if so, when and how much? And if they can do it, then
and they're on social media and it doesn't even look good on Instagram, stay away from them.
Yeah. I mean,
anybody can make something look good on Instagram.
Yeah,
man.
I guess so. That's true.
So if they look shitty on Instagram, it's probably even shittier.
Some businesses have run out of talk about. Some people are just bad at capturing Instagram things.
Yeah, we see that all the time now too, don't we?
Literally, I just showed you something today. But yeah, that's another topic that we're deviating from. But anything else?
Just do your research.
Yes.
Check out previous works.
Builds.
Make sure they've done more cars than just theirs.
Yeah.
And talk to previous customers.
And that's it.
And hopefully they have an example that you can look at in person, because photos and videos and stuff definitely does no justice for almost anything. If you can go and see it, put hands on it if you're lucky enough, and have like a legitimate conversation, just be very, very clear. Communication is key. And don't expect more than you can afford.
Yes. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video, listening to this podcast.
This one was all over the place.
I know we're all over. Don't worry.
Pretty good.
That's the magic of cutting and editing. But we will see you guys next week. If you like this podcast / video or everything, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Give this 5 stars on all the podcast platforms, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.